The Union Cabinet has approved changes to the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. The amendments proposed include more power to the Committee of Creditors and extended deadline to the process. Payaswini is here with the changes on the cards and what this really means for the existing cases as well.
Thanks, Harsha. So there are 7 broad changes that, the cabinet approval has outlined in the press release. Now, remember, all of this, will be determined by the fine print as and when it comes out. But here's what broadly the changes look like. The first, of course, is that resolution plans can now contemplate mergers, demergers, amalgamations and schemes. Looks like they are contemplating a single window clearance under IBC. Now, does that mean that, let's say, for instance, currently acquisitions are going to Competition Commission of India for approval? Does this mean that, that separate approval will not be necessary? Will become clearer as and when the language is out. The second has to do with the timeline. So currently, the deadline for completing the insolvency process is 270 days. By jurisprudence, what courts have laid down that in this 270 days, the litigation period won't be included. Now, the cabinet is proposing an all-inclusive 330 days timeline, which means that the entire litigation or judicial processes will have to be completed within these 330 days. Of course, experts are skeptical as to whether this timeline can be met or not. The third has to do with the COC powers. What the cabinet has approved it that the commercial decision will now come within the powers of COC, and the COC will get to decide on the distribution of claims to various creditors. I'm calling it the SR Steel case fix because there the NCLAT had laid down that the commercial wisdom is not laid down as a power that the COC has in the IBC as it stands today, and it's probably to fix that, the ratio of that judgment that the cabinet has approved this decision. The fourth has got to do with distribution of claims, and to some extent that it addresses also the ratio that's been laid down in the SR Steel case with by the NCLAT. Before that, let me just give you a background on what distribution of claims is all about. Now, Section 53 of the IBC lays down a credit hierarchy or a waterfall, which essentially means that in what order creditors will get paid. Broadly, the hierarchy looks like IBC process costs, workman dues, secured creditors, operational creditors, unsecured creditors, and then government dues. Now, in this hierarchy, now the cabinet has, approved that this hierarchy, which has been laid down in Section 53 for the liquidation stage, will also now apply at the resolution process stage, which is again what the NCLAT had, pointed out in the SR Steel case that, look, you cannot apply the Section 53 waterfall that's meant for liquidation stage to the resolution process. Now, cabinet is proposing to fix that. The other change in this is that the credit hierarchy, besides the credit hierarchy, they have also said that the financial creditors will be in the waterfall above than, operational creditors, and dissenting financial creditors and operational creditors at the resolution plan stage will at least get the liquidation value. Now, this is important because these changes are proposed to come into effect retrospectively. So those plans which are not finalized or are facing appeals, in some cases, we have seen that financial creditors have not made any payments in the resolution plan to dissenting financial creditors or operational creditors. That will need to be fixed from the day these changes come into effect. The fifth change has got to do with voting by trustees. So there is a group of, let's say, home buyers or debenture holders above a certain value for whom a representative is appointed by the NCLT. What the cabinet has essentially said is that how the voting will work in those cases. So let's say there are 100 home buyers, in a given case. 50 of them show up in a meeting. Out of those, let's say 10 have a vote share of more than 50%. What the cabinet is proposing is that it's the vote of these 10 who have the vote share of 50% and more that will prevail, and that will be the voting for taken on behalf of the entire home buyer creditor bucket. The sixth change has to do with resolution plans that, the language reads that it should be binding on all stakeholders, central, state government and local authorities which have dues from the insolvent company. Now, there are two interpretations to this. One is that, some of these resolution plans contemplate change of licenses or, let's say, transfer of licenses. So far, the sectoral regulators were insisting that there needs to be a separate approval that needs to be sought from them if the resolution plans are contemplating this. It's perhaps, this back and forth that the cabinet is now trying to plug and saying that, once the NCLT approves a certain plan, no separate approvals need to be taken. The second interpretation that experts are taking from this is that with regards to tax dues, can the resolution plans now, let's say, propose that the tax dues can be waived in totality, or the interest and penalty costs can be waived? That's the second interpretation. Of course, all of this will depend on the fine print as and when it comes out. The final has to do with the seventh change has to do with the COC being able to order liquidation of the insolvent company if they can see no buyers or bidders prospectively coming for that corporate debtor. So what the proposed change is that the COC can order liquidation after the COC has been formed and before the information memorandum has been prepared by the IRP. Basically, information memorandum lays down the value of claims, the nature of claims, etc., etc. So after the COC has been formed and before the information memorandum has been issued, the COC can order liquidation.